Hello, everybody. Hello, it is me again. That would make anyone happy. Welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I am Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me. This is the live stream I do a couple of times weekly where we answer your questions. And by we, I mean me. I don't know why I said we. It might be like the royal we, like you refer to yourself in the third person. I think that's like technically the sixth person. Anyway. Thank you for being here. This is a Q&A, so if you are seeing my beautiful face, you should see a chat box somewhere in the vicinity of my face. If you're watching this on a phone or a tablet or a computer or any other device apart from a TV, apparently. It's hard to do the chat thing when you're watching a TV, but the purpose of this is for me to answer your questions, anything about job search, anything about careers. So that includes resumes, applications, how to do an interview, job interview questions, how to negotiate an offer. If you're going after posted jobs or you're going after hidden jobs, you're getting jobs through networking, which is like by far the most popular way. All of that, that's what we're here to talk about. And the title of today's episode is Where Are the Jobs? What Recruiters Really Want in 2025? Live Q&A. So that's what we're here to talk about. So get in the chat and let me know, what's on your mind. Now, it is the 4th of July. So for Americans, certainly, this is like, the big one, right? Where people drink a keg, set off fireworks, shoot guns in the air, all the normal, well-adjusted ways how humans show, that they're having a good time, really. That's happening right now. People are going nuts. But it's just a typical day. So if that's you, what the hell are you doing listening to me? Go out and party. But if you're here, you're from anywhere else in the world, or you're dealing with more important matters, let me know what's on your mind. Let me know what you're struggling with, what you're worried about, and I'll try and help you out. A lot of the videos on my channel are about how to answer job interview questions. Okay, so any of that stuff. But more than that, there's a lot more to getting hired. There's the navigating the whole job market thing, the discovering of jobs, which, I do these public opinion polls, and a lot of people tell me that that's really not kind of a thing that they're tuned into, like where to find the jobs. They're having problems discovering them. People claim that that's not really a thing that they're dealing with. I'm actually surprised by that. I think that that's one of the biggest areas of concern, because in recent times, when you look at the posted job market, there's been a rise of like things like fake jobs and stuff like this. And it's been really revealed, like we keep going further and further down this path, just how dehumanizing and undesirable the process is to put yourself forward for those jobs. There's a variety of reasons for this, but, and that usually points to the problem of like, well, where are the good jobs? Where are the jobs that you can actually get? Do you have to go through this process? Is this the only way? You're being asked these days to, film videos of yourself answering job interview questions. You're not even like talking to a person, you're doing this like just in front of the camera and then submitting it, and then you never hear anything back, and you wonder like, what the hell is all that about? It feels really weird, and I'm not even hearing anything back. Or sometimes you're doing a job interview with an AI. That's where we are right now. You know what I mean? And people are rightfully asking themselves, like, is this really what you have to do to get a job? The answer is no. No, it isn't. Most jobs, you don't get hired that way. So you can play that game and you can win at it. Yes. But there are other things too. So there's a lot to this. So whatever you are particularly interested in, get in the chat. Let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, and I will do my best to help you out. This is just a Q&A. And it's weird because it's 4th of July and there's less people here today. So, it's probably going to be more dead air for me just trying to fill like I'm doing now. There are 10 people here. Thank you for being here. Hopefully, if you are if you are trying to find a job, or always keep in mind that jobs are not the only thing you can do in this world to make money. A lot of people don't work as employees. A lot of people are entrepreneurs. A lot of people, do other things. There's alternate stuff too, like being an investor and all this kind of stuff. But, and I encourage people to explore the world of entrepreneurship, if you are in a position where you can do that. A lot of people can't right at the moment. If you're between jobs, you need money and you need money fast. But, just as a sort of steady state thing, if you don't want to be an employee your entire life and work under somebody's thumb, there are other things out there, that you could do. It's just a matter of filling your head with the knowledge required. Once you know what to do, the world is your oyster. And that's what I've learned in my life. When you're young, you got all the energy and the drive, but you don't have the knowledge. And then as you get older, then you get the knowledge, but sometimes the moment's passed a bit because you're older, you don't have the energy, you don't have the opportunity. Maybe you've got family responsibilities, other things. You can't just go and stake it on like one roll of the dice kind of thing. Maybe like you could in your 20s. So, there's all kinds of things going on there. But certainly job search is a major thing. And what I found is that, like most people know, is that there's a difference, a very clear difference between being qualified for a job and knowing how to get a job. They're two completely separate things. And a lot of the young people that do job search and they try and find, that's one of the first things they learn. It's like, I'm qualified. Why am I not getting hired? It's like, yeah, because it's more than just about being qualified, right? Tech Savvy says, how can you tell if a job posting is a scam? The short answer is you can't, but there are certain standard red flags that you could, recognize, right? There's a whole bunch of these. Like you could just do a Google search, you get a complete list. But things like, like things that are too good to be true for a start, like you make $1 million doing this totally mundane thing that anybody can do. That's kind of a red flag. If the employer is very secretive, like you're not really clear on exactly who the employer is, they don't post an address anywhere that you could find, like a physical address, like in what country are you in, kind of thing. So there's certain sort of standard red flags around that kind of stuff. If they ask for really weird stuff in advance, that's usually a tip off right there. Like they'll want to know everything right up front. Usually that's not how this stuff works. Usually, if the company is very interested in you and they're really seriously considering, bringing you on board, they will need certain things. They will need access to they will need to know your bank account so they can set up, your pay to be transferred into your bank account every, couple of weeks or whatever. But like asking for that, like right up front before you even done an interview, that's a red flag. That's just not what people do. You know what I mean? Jobs that are very vague, they don't explain what the role is, or it's like so vague that it's just silly. That's a standard red flag. Okay. So there's things around that, like they're unclear of what the duties are. It's very loose. There's all kinds of things, red flags in the language they use. There's like just a whole bunch of things. It's basically anything that looks fishy to you, okay, or unreasonable, usually is, okay? The reason why it isn't super clear is because there's several reasons why there might be a fake job, right? One simply is that, they posted a job and then they filled the job, but they didn't go back and remove the posting from all the places that they had posted it. That's something we see that's relatively common, right? So you see a job posting, you go, okay, they're hiring, so you apply for it, and they don't call you back or whatever. It's because they've already filled the job. Now, it wasn't a nasty thing. They were trying to mislead you. It was just incompetence or oversight, right? And then there's all kinds of reasons, other reasons where they want to signal things about the company publicly. And then it goes all the way to like essentially fraud, where The reason that they're posting the job is to be able to get your information so they can do identity theft and, hack your bank accounts and like all this kind of stuff. So there's multiple reasons why a fake job might exist. So that's why there isn't one simple thing that says this is a fake job. It's because there's all these different types of fake jobs, right? So, but if you feel suspicious about something, look it up. I'd recommend just go to ChatGPT and say, like, there's a job posting. It says this. That seems strange. Is this a fake job? And, you can get a pretty good answer, like specifically for that case. You can even post in the job posting, like you copy paste the text of the job posting, and you go to ChatGPT, right, which anyone can access for free, like Google. You go to the prompt, like it looks like a Google prompt if you never use ChatGPT, and you say, here is a job posting, and then you say, quote, and then paste the whole thing, unquote. Is this likely a fake job? And it will say, well, because it's of this, and this, that kind of raises some flags. So I think it could be, So hopefully that answers your question in a very roundabout, muddled stream of consciousness kind of way. Hopefully that's helpful. Sheaf Keen, if I'm saying that right. I'm sure I'm not. I apologize. Says, I can't believe how some recruiter behave nowadays, ghosting, not coming in time to interview, or changing dates multiple times. Absolutely. Yeah. Two things have happened. Okay. First of all, and I'm being kind here, recruiters have been severely overworked. Okay. That's one thing that's going on. Okay. Still doesn't explain some of this behavior, but that's one thing. Secondly, we've just across the board, people are just less decent. So less respect for manners, protocol, etiquette, especially on the low end, like on the bottom end, right? Like up here, people are still kind of doing more of that, but which is good. But on the bottom, that's what we're seeing, And that the other forces that are pushing people in that direction is there's a couple of things that might be less obvious, and that is that generally speaking, posted jobs are the low quality jobs. Okay, the good quality jobs are in the hidden job market. What you're seeing posted are things they have to post because they can't find people for it, right? Like if you were like a hiring manager, you ran a department of people, like of employees in a big company, and you just mentioned, I have to hire another person for this group. And just mentioning that resulted in like 5 people coming forward and saying, hey, I hear that you're hiring. Listen, I'd like that job, or I've got a brother or a friend, like it's a desirable job, right? That pays well and they treat you well. Like that's the effect it has, So imagine a situation where you say just casually to the people around you, we're hiring, and nobody comes forward. If you want that job filled, then you have to post it publicly and promote it, because you can't find people that would be candidates for it, that would want to do it, that right? So those are the jobs that end up being posted publicly. Now, there's exceptions, but that's usually what we see. So a lot of the good jobs, they don't need to post them because you already have people that, want them and are qualified, and, maybe there's a personal, not nepotism, but like a personal, link. So someone you trust says, I know this person, I've worked with them for 10 years, trust me, they're good. You should interview them, kind of thing. You're like, oh, okay, well, I trust you. So if you're telling me that this person is good, okay, maybe I'll give them a shot, that kind of thing, right? So all of that contributes to the fact that recruiters are behaving not great when it comes to dealing with recruiting for posted jobs. Ghosting, just so you know, ghosting, like it basically more or less works exactly like this in every other area of business. The difference is that when they ghost people at higher levels and, other things, what's going on. That's the language that says no, right? Like that's how they say no. They're not going to say, No, absolutely not. What the hell do you think this is? They're not going to say that to your face because that's not polite, right? If I can put it bluntly. So instead they say, we should do something sometime. Yes, absolutely. I'll call you, and then you never hear from them again. Like that's kind of what it looks like. I hate to say. Now, the difference is that job seekers usually aren't tuned into that kind of stuff. A lot of young people in their 20s, like you say, I'll get back to you, and they kind of take you literally at your word, as one intelligent person would, They're not expecting that you're lying right through your teeth, to their face. That's not respectful. But that's kind of how it goes, unfortunately. Now, that being said, there's certainly a lot of just unprofessionalism, incompetence, and just terrible people like doing this, that are just nasty, right? So I'm not glossing over that. But you're absolutely right. Like, not showing up on time for interviews, like consistently. Look, nobody's perfect, okay? But come on. Like, when you go to job interviews, it's like a regular thing. They act totally nonchalant about it. They don't apologize. Stuff like that. It's very disrespectful, and you're not wrong, and you're not alone in feeling essentially outraged by this, because it's unprofessional behavior, and you deserve better. Everyone deserves better. Hello to Yvette. Yvette is here. Thank you for being here. Let me know what's up. Scott says, never give them your bank account number. It could be a phishing scam. Absolutely, yeah. Especially, like, okay, maybe after they've extended an offer to you and they say, okay, can you give us a blank check so we could set it up, or a void check, we could set it up with payroll. Fair enough. You know what I'm saying? But like, if it's on the job application before they even give you an interview, we need to know all your particulars of your bank account, PIN code, mother's maiden name, social security number, no, how can I put this? No, you know what I mean? Probably a scam. Yvette says, hello, any advice for a parent who stood home for 10 years to take care of children or ill family members? During that time, I pursued my BA, so Bachelor of Arts, and I did freelance work as a special education advocate. Okay, here's my advice. The traditional way of getting a job is by having absolutely no connection with these people whatsoever, and you go through standard channels. That means you go through their hiring process, their formal recruitment and selection process. And they say, if you want to work here, here's what you do. You go to this website, right? You fill in this form, you submit your application, then we contact you, right? You can't see my hand clapping. That's what this sound is. It's just off screen, right? So it feels like someone got slapped. Now there's no cause for alarm. So that's their standard process. That's what they want you to do officially, okay? Now, the problem is that if you follow their standard employment process, okay, that favors certain types of candidates and it really filters out others, okay? Now, there's exceptions to everything, but generally speaking, people with work gaps don't really fit into the philosophy that recruiters are taught, okay? How do I know this? Because I used to teach recruiters in university for a period, okay? They are taught that if someone is out of work for a while, that makes them a higher risk candidate. Because, oh, sure, they can give you an explanation to justify it and say, it's because of this. But do you really know that that's the truth? No, you don't. So it's risky, right? Now, it's stupid, but that's how they think, okay? Recruiters are not trying to find the best candidate. That's pretty damn hard, even for some of the smartest, most resourceful people in the world. What they're trying to do is they're trying to find the least risky candidate. That's something that they can do. That's more realistic. So unfortunately, that process tends to filter out perfectly good people that don't fit into a certain category. And if you've had work gaps, that's one of the things that they filter out. Generalists are another thing that they filter out, right? There's several of these. Now, does that mean that you can't get a job? Of course not. It just means that you have to do what most people do, okay? Because most people actually don't get a job doing the thing I just described, where you don't know the company, you don't know anyone there, and you go to the website, and you fill in an application, and then you wait to be called, right? And then you follow their interview process, right? Most people don't actually get hired that way. And if you don't believe me on that, don't take my word for it. Go do your own research and discover this for yourself, okay? The way most people, in fact, get hired is some form of networking. Now, you say that you are a freelance, you've done freelance work as a special education advocate, okay? You've also been like taking care of children and family members for 10 years, right? Now, what I'm wondering is, do you have any connections? Certainly through your special education advocate thing, okay? Have you met people on the inside of the educational system? Maybe you don't work with them super closely, but you know of them. You've maybe met them once or twice. You could easily get like a meeting or have a conversation with them if you wanted to, right? Because you're on the inside of this world or this system, right? That would be the most likely and most promising way to get a job, okay, is if you talk to not one, but several of those people, take advantage of connections that you have on the inside, right? You report to someone who's like a manager of some kind, presumably an administrator or something. They know other administrators. They may know people above them, maybe like some kind of superintendent or, whatever, right? Principal, I don't know. And, you have a conversation with them and you say like, listen, you could do it a variety of different ways, but the point is you have those personal connections. Now you're much more of a real choice if they're looking for someone. If they do have a vacancy that you are qualified to fill, before they start just posting it and vetting strangers, they would much rather look at someone like you because you are much less risky. You've been working in their organization for a while. You're a known quantity. They'd easily be able to ask all the people that are within their own organization, like, what do you think of this person? You've worked with them for a couple of years. Are they good? Like, what do you think? The fact that you've remained employed there for a while suggests that you're at least half decent. And that's a lot less risky than taking a chance on a stranger, even if that stranger on paper looks more qualified. You know what I mean? Because remember, this is about risk. It's not about absolute qualifications, right? So I would go that vector. Maybe as a homemaker, you've been connected to maybe other parents. I don't know if you're... Forgive me if this is like an oversimplification, but like I'm thinking almost like soccer mom type, you're dealing with kids all the time and, stuff like this. You might encounter other parents and other people out in the world. And through those connections, you learn that, if you put out feelers like I'm looking for something, or you hear about they're hiring at my husband's job or my wife's job, whatever, like that's a lot more promising. You've got that personal connection. So I would examine those honestly and go that direction. If you've never done anything like this before, this is a learning opportunity for you. It'll really, really open doors for you. It'll empower you. It might feel a bit weird at first, but I highly recommend it, and it will be more promising than applying through the default recruitment and selection process for organizations where they take your application and they compare you to everybody else on a level playing field, and and then they filter out things like work gaps and you haven't dedicated your life to teaching or whatever. Okay, so I don't know if that's helpful, but it's that kind of approach that I would take. I would learn all you can about that. If you do want to do that with me, I've got stuff on my YouTube channel. I've also got this course, which is like, where I put all that stuff in like one place. So you could check that out. But that's kind of the world it's far more promising than doing the job application thing. Tech Savvy says, I know many recruiters, they tell me many applicants are ghosting them, not showing up for interviews, resigning from job a few days after being hired. Yeah, that does happen, but that's not like a universal thing across the board. I mean, there are desirable jobs out there that people don't resign from after 2 days as a usual thing. You know what I mean? Like that might be true of like, you want to work in fast food or something. I mean, or like low level stuff. But I mean, for professional jobs, we're not seeing that like as a trend, that's just, but that ties in with a lot of the types of jobs that they post in the posted market. It's stuff that they can't fill because they're not very desirable jobs. So it's consistent that like, when they hire people to fill those roles, those people have a high turnover rate or they don't last. It's consistent with that. Yvette says, yes, I'm a full-time stay-at-home mom and I'm proud of it. Well, right on. Hey, I don't know the right expression, but is it the grass is always greener? It's like, people don't understand, on one hand, it appears that stay-at-home mom thing or stay-at-home parent thing is like, it's like a joyride, like an easy ride, it's an easy thing. And it can be for some people, but that's certainly not universal. Like there's a lot of people that work damn hard, trying to pull everything together. They have a very challenging family situation. They maybe have a child with a disability, like whatever, and, it's no picnic. And in addition to, you're not bringing in like a real solid income from it, in addition, you get sort of the stigma around it. People look down on you, because of it. And a lot of those people don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's not all peaches and cream for everybody. There's some real challenges, that people have, and it's not super easy. So I'm not sure where you fit on that, but, I'm not close-minded to just saying, oh, you're a stay-at-home mom and therefore you must be lazy or you're living the dream when everybody else has to work or something. It's like, no, absolutely not. You should be proud of it. And it's good that you want to rejoin the workforce too. If you're in a situation where, like if you're taking care, you mentioned like taking care of a sick family member, that's not a picnic. That takes a lot of resilience depending on your situation. It can be damn hard. I don't know if I would have the what it takes to be able to do that like for more than like a week or two. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, you should be proud. Yvette says, I was looking for a corporate job for better pay. However, I'm willing to get back in the workforce any way I can. Yeah, well, look at that. That kind of shows some fortitude right there. If you're not being arrogant about it, you're saying like, look, if I got to start at the bottom, I'm willing to do it. Not a lot of people have. Some people have that, but other people don't. They have like this very arrogant kind of entitled type of thing going on. And, I want to get back in the workforce, but I don't want to start here or here. I want to start here, and damn it, I deserve to start here. And it's like, sometimes that's just out to lunch, depending on details. Sheaf Keen says, during a couple of months, I had the issue of receiving rejection emails right after applying. I followed your advice on CV customization and heavily started using AI. This helped me land a few interviews. Okay, good. That's good. I sense there's more to this, so I'm eagerly anticipating the rest of that story. Yeah, I think I know the expression I was going to use. It was something along the lines of, walking a mile in someone's shoes. You don't know who they are until you walk a mile in their shoes, that kind of thing, right? That's definitely true, That's one of the things I think you learn as you grow older. It's like there's many, many different worlds, out there. And you can't always assume that everybody's in your world. You know what I mean? There are things of which you are ignorant. There are major things of which you are ignorant. They really affect people's lives. So you don't always know, what you might think what's up with them, but you don't. And sometimes the truth is like more horrible than you that you could have imagined, you know what I mean? So the point is, be respectful to people and don't just talk down to them. There's a lot of things going on out there. And I've been very fortunate in the sense that I've had my eyes opened to a lot of different things. And I'm not quite as ignorant as I was when I started out. I can't say the same for other people, Obviously, other people are in that boat too, but not everyone. Hopefully, they don't get their eyes opened in a very, very, very unpleasant way. Chief Keen says, just said to share with others in the chat, and thank you for your golden advice. Well, that's very kind of you, Chief Keen. I'm glad that it certainly worked out, or it helped you out. That's great to hear, and thank you for the feedback. It gives me a good feeling hearing that it's actually helping people. And yeah, if like what I consider to be the best stuff on my channel is I did a playlist like 4 or 5 years ago called Get Hired. And there's like about 15 videos or something in that playlist. And those are all my like popular videos, the ones with like millions of views and stuff. And so they talk about how to answer the basic sort of job interview questions, standard job interview questions. So check those out if you haven't seen those already. That's probably, if you want to bang for the buck, that's kind of some of the best stuff that I have anyway. Yeah. So there's 20 people here. Thank you for being here. If you want to go deeper with this stuff for me, check out that course. There's a link to it in the description box under this live stream. That's where all my advice is, all in one place. And what that'll teach you to do is how to get jobs when you apply for posted jobs, and it will teach you how to get jobs when you are pursuing hidden jobs, jobs that are not posted publicly. And I never get tired of saying this because I feel I have to keep saying it because a lot of people don't know. All the jobs you see out there that are posted, all of those, that's 20% of all the jobs that are actually out there. So the other 80% that you're not seeing, right, they're not posted, but they're there and you can get them, right? You just have to go about it a different way. You can't find them on an internet job search. So maybe you realize this, maybe you don't, but the first thing is to realize that that's how it works. Okay, so don't take my word for it. Go out and do your own research and learn that. If you're not convinced of that, then this kind of ends here. You know what I mean? But if you realize this and you've seen ample evidence of it, you know, and you want to learn how to go after those jobs, you know, that's where you learn like very basic networking kind of thing, right? Networking is simply people communicating with other people. That's all it is. You know, do you have to know a lot of people? No, you don't. That's not what this is about. There are many ways of getting jobs using networking. You know, that's one method, is to just know a million people, but that's a lot less effective than you might think. You know, most people are not in a situation where you just happen to know someone that just happens to be hiring someone exactly like you right now. That really isn't as common as you might think. You know, what's more effective, that's still pretty basic and doable for most people, especially introverts, is direct outreach. That's where you reach out to employers. You don't know them, but you discover who they are, and then you contact them online. You reach out to the individuals, not to the company, but to the individuals, right? You know, and you state your case. You say, hey, I'm here. I do this. If ever you're looking for someone who does that, let me know, because I'd love to work for you. Have a great day. You know? And you don't need a response. You know what I mean? You're not asking for anything from them. The only time they would be interested in that is if they indeed are hiring right now. They're realizing they got to hire soon for someone just like you, and then you land right in their lap in a very serendipitous way. And if that's the situation, you know, they're probably going to respond and contact you and say, hey, you know, maybe let's talk. You know, there might be some potential here, you know. So that's called direct outreach. That's a very common way. It really doesn't take much. It's something you can do from the comfort of your own home, right? And it's where you're hacking the system. You're going around. You're not following the standard HR, you know, procedure for recruitment and selection. You're talking directly to the hiring managers, right? The people that originate the jobs before they call up the HR department or engage an external HR company and say, listen, I need someone to post this job and filter the candidates and set up the interviews and give me some recommendations on, you know, who you think might be good. You know, before they get that other person involved, the person who's actually in charge, you're dealing directly with them. And the advantage of this also is that when you do this, and when they happen to know they have to be looking soon, you have no competition. That's the thing. So anyway, I could go on about this. Hopefully I've whetted your appetite. Listen, I got no skin in the game here. Learn all you can about this stuff. It is to your own advantage. You can learn it through me. You can learn it through a variety of resources online, other people. Always get your information from a variety of sources. Don't ever trust like one single point of source of information on everything, okay? You know what I mean? So anyway, if you do want to learn it with me, you can check out that course. That's where I put all that stuff like all in one place. Anyway. Okay, where are we here? I was looking for a corporate job, better pay. Okay, just to share. Yvette, do you teach the non-posted jobs in your courses? Absolutely. Yes, that's what the bulk of this is about. It's not all of it, but it's what the bulk of it is. Dave, I know this chick who was laid off from a company where she was head HR. She gets a lot of interviews, but she's too cocky. The HR lady can't land a simple secretarial job. Ha ha ha. Yeah, well, the thing is that, like, recruiter is usually an entry-level job. I don't know if you guys know that. Some people know that. It's not like you're a recruiter, you're like someone way high up, in the company. A recruiter, no offense, is a grunt, And you do get people that really rise to higher levels, like you have executive recruiters, true executive recruiters. Not all the people who say they're executive recruiters but aren't actual executive recruiters. They're dealing with like hiring C-level people and board members and things like this, like people like that. It's a whole different skill set, where you actually have to be educated and capable and very polite, follow etiquette to a T. It's a whole different thing. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, a lot of recruiters will say they're executive recruiters when they're really not. They wish they were, but they're not. And you can kind of tell within 10 seconds of talking to them just by how they speak to people, Dave, okay, we talked about that. Tech Savvy says, do your courses have a satisfaction guarantee? Absolutely not. I have absolutely no control. It's like watching a video, I get hate from everybody all the time. I get hate because I'm fat. I get hate because I told people they're awesome. A lot of my more popular videos, I used to always sign off by saying, always remember, you're awesome, because you are. And I got people sending me messages like laden with expletives telling me how inappropriate it is or how stupid it is for me to say that because I don't know them. It's like, okay, I have no control over what people do with knowledge when I put it out there. So absolutely not. Listen, if you have second thoughts, don't do it. You know what I mean? I'm not here to like convince you to spend money on my stuff. That's not what this is about. If you want to go deeper, great. And my understanding is that actually the course, like I don't do any one-on-one consultation or anything for HR type stuff, but like for what it's worth, my courses, I believe, are quite a bit cheaper than other things that people are doing. So I don't know what they do. I'm sure they put all kinds of sort of checks and, legal kind of disclaimers and things. I don't really have that, but, I do not want people taking it if you're just going to like, this isn't what I expected. I want my money back. That's really not what I want. It's not worth the trouble to me. So if you're not convinced, just don't do it. Okay. And that way everyone's happy. You know what I mean? So no, and I think nobody does. Not in like the consultation thing. Like I'm a management consultant. So I mean, even with management consulting, you can advise people, but you have absolutely no control over like do they take your advice or not? If they listen but then don't do what you say and then complain to you, it's like sorry, man. You didn't follow my advice. You know what I mean? Somebody can give my answers in a job interview, but what they don't tell you is that they showed up not wearing any pants and they didn't get the job, and then they claim the advice was bad. So, you know what I mean? It's like you get all kinds, right? in the end, you just have to do stuff for yourself, and that's just how it goes. Keep the questions coming. That was actually really cool getting like a stream of questions there. I'd like to continue if at all possible, as I remember to occasionally engage my second camera. You like this? This is the height of technology. I got these cameras like 5 years ago or something, and no, this is a pivotal year for me. I'm sure nobody cares about this, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is a pivotal year for me because I'm actually upgrading my equipment. The PC, the computer that I'm using to talk to you guys on right now, I built it myself in 2010. Okay, that's how old it is, and that's why I'm desperately overdue for an upgrade. So I'm actually upgrading my equipment. I built my channel, for what it's worth. I built my channel using just the equipment I had lying around my my office. So that's what I did, and finally I'm gonna get extra help for my YouTube channel and get new equipment, and then hopefully that'll take me into the future. But that's why these live streams are very basic, and I apologize because even if the sun comes out, all the brightness goes way up and I have to manually adjust it. It's very basic. So anyway, I'm just killing time. Get in the chat if you have any questions about job search or anything else I can help you with. Let me know. There are 24 people here, and I'm just waiting for the questions to roll on in because I have no agenda or plan of what to talk about. Yeah. And if I don't get anything, then I guess I have to sign off because I can't just monologue forever as much as I'd like to. But the good news is that these days you can monologue with ChatGPT. I recently kind of have been exploring that, where you just sort of explore your ideas or your thoughts or your opinions or or like learn about stuff, and you could just, it's kind of great if you're the type of person that likes to have inspirational conversations with a friend or someone else like that, talk about cool ideas. I used to do that way back in the day. You'd have a bunch of friends, you'd go to like a coffee shop type affair, you'd load up on caffeine, and then you'd like talk about inspirational things, what you wanted to do with your life and what you thought about movies and, other things. And it was really cool, and I haven't done that for years. And it's almost like you can get a version of that using things like ChatGPT. You can explore all kinds of weird stuff that you thought about, even stuff you're kind of a little embarrassed to say out loud, So really cool resource there. That's what makes me feel that AI is ultimately a very, very good thing. It's going to lead to change like these things always do, but ultimately the change will be good. Yvette says, I've never networked on LinkedIn. How do I start with networking? Okay, well, it's kind of hard to get a more general question than that. Look, there are many ways of doing it, right? What some people do is they do the salesperson type thing. I get like invitations all the time from people that I don't know, and they don't even have like a note or anything. Like they're just like, here, connect with me. It's like, who the hell are you? I don't know who you are. I don't just connect to random people for no reason. That's not a network. You know what I mean? But some people try and do it that way. Other people, the first kind of thing they do is that anyone you know in real life, you look them up on LinkedIn and you try and connect with them on LinkedIn, right? So if that person theoretically posts anything or they change jobs or, whatever, just like kind of Facebook, it's like the Facebook of business. You can sort of follow them. You can still sort of see where they are, and you could contact them if you needed to, right? So that's usually like kind of, I think one of the first things people do is they seek out all the people they know in real life and they connect with them, right? But there's many ways of doing it. Now, what I did to build my consulting business was I did all my networking on LinkedIn because I'm an introvert. Like, don't be fooled by the fact that I talk on the internet. I'm actually a pretty heavy introvert. I just learned how to speak, or at least do a reasonably good approximation of it early on. But this is not my natural kind of thing. So what I did was I connected with basically just CEOs of companies in my hometown and said, I want to build my consulting business here. And, so I reached out to tons of CEOs, just of like local companies. Like I've been a CEO. It's not this thing. You're not a rock star. You're not a celebrity. You're just a regular Joe. You're like just a manager who happens to be in charge of a self-contained entity rather than a department or something, And so what I did was I described this process in there, by the way, if that's what you're wondering about earlier. But basically, I looked up the companies. So you discover the companies with Google Maps. And I made a video, like a free video, showing exactly how to do this, all right, where you could see my desktop, you could see me on LinkedIn, you could see me on Google Maps, exactly what I'm doing. And I take you through this. The video in question is linked below in the description box if you do want to check it out. It's called How Successful People Get Jobs. Okay, so it's called How Successful People Get Jobs. That's where I show you what I'm describing right now. Okay, so what you could do is you could go on Google Maps. You type in the name of your hometown. Okay, so in my case, it's Winnipeg, Canada. So I type in Winnipeg, and I'm looking at a map of Winnipeg, right? And then Google Maps, it has like the map on the screen, but it also has like a little prompt, like a search box at the top. So as you're looking at a map of your hometown, you can enter in like a profession like accounting or jet skis or radioactive cancer therapy research. Okay, like these are things. And what will happen is that any organization, like a business or something, or an institution that does that or is linked to that in some way will pop up on the map, right? So if you have, let's say you're trained as I don't know what your training could be. Maybe you're a marine biologist or something, and you type in marine biology. Any institution in your hometown will pop up on the map that has to do with marine biology. So you might get a few museums, a couple of universities, and then maybe some businesses that deal with marine biology. They sell products to that industry, or they do consulting in that industry, whatever, right? So if you type in, basically what you do or the types of companies you could work for, they'll light up on the map, and then you get an idea of the organizations near you that could employ someone with your skills, right? That's the idea. So that's like a list of targets. Now, this has nothing to do with like looking at job postings, okay? Like whether they've posted a job right now or not is immaterial, because the idea is that they employ people like you. They could be looking right now and have a job posted. They could be looking right now, but they don't have a job posted, right? Publicly. Maybe it's just, a manager is kind of like looking around for referrals or something. They want to hire someone, but they don't post a job. That's a lot more common than you might think. Or they're just not hiring, like period, right? Now, maybe they will be in 2 months, but not now, right? So the idea is that they're a target. They're a lead. They have potential to hire you. So Google Maps can discover all these employers around you. And if you do many queries, like, okay, marine biology, ocean research would be another search term. I don't know. Biological tech would be another search term. And these will reveal more and more sort of potential employers around you, right? So you create a sort of master list of all the places that are looking for someone with your abilities, right? Your education, your experience, your skills. And then the second step is you go to LinkedIn. And LinkedIn takes it even further, because if you type in the name of one of these leads, one of these organizations that popped up, you can then see inside the organization to the individuals, right? Oh, okay. So when I did a search for marine biology, this place popped up. There was like 10 things that popped up. One of them was the Oceanographic, whatever you call it, Institute of Winnipeg, whatever. So you go to LinkedIn, you type in Oceanographic Institute of Winnipeg, which is totally a thing, by the way. That's where all the cool people hang out. And you do a people search, and it'll say, okay, well, that organization has 60 people that are on LinkedIn. Here's the owner, here's the CEO, here's the chief operating officer, here's the chief marketing officer. You can maybe go lower than that. Here's the head of the scientific research department, whatever. Now you could reach out to those people. You can either ask them to connect with you. You could say, hey, I see we're in the same industry. I see, maybe we even have some connections in common. Like, hey, I'd like to add you to my network. Some people will accept, some people won't. But, if you blast that out to a lot of people, you'll get a ratio, a percentage that say, sure, yeah, they accept your connection. They look at your profile. They say, this person they're in marine biology, so it makes sense that we should be connected to people in that industry in this town. So sure, that's one way. You could also send them a direct message. You could look at their profile. Maybe they even have their email address on there. That's another possible way. I don't recommend those, by the way, but you could do that. And you know what I mean? So what I did was I sent connection requests to everyone with a note, like just a template. I can't remember what it said. It was something along the lines of, we have this in common, so I'd very much like to add you to my network. And some people say yes, and some people don't. And I think for me, it was somewhere I can't even remember anymore. It was like 20 or 30% of people that I sent it out to said yes. So when you're blasting this out to hundreds of people, you're getting quite a few new connections, and they're all at a higher level than you, and they're all in your industry, in your hometown, and they work for organizations that have potential to hire you, So, okay, great. You don't know any of these people, but you're connected to them. Now, you could go a step further. You could then send them a message and say, you could say a variety of things. You could ask them for informational interviews. Hey, I'd very much like to get your expert opinion on this. Can you spare 30 minutes? You name the date, time, and place, and I'll be there. I'd love to ask you some questions about the industry and where it's going. Would that be possible? And most people don't respond. Some people say no, and other people say yes. And then you've got 10 interviews lined up with these people, that can hire you. And, so that's one way. Another way is to probably the simplest way is just to send out a blanket message where you say, hello, my name is this, I do this. If ever you're looking for someone that kicks ass doing that, let me know, because I'd love to work for you. That's all. Have yourself a great day. You're not asking for anything. You're just letting them know this. And most people, they're not going to be hiring someone like you right now, just playing the odds. But the odds is that some of them will be, whether it's 1% of people or 5% of people, they will be on the lookout for someone like you, because they either have a position now or they will have a position soon, So it's those people, the ones that are tuned into LinkedIn, they'll respond and they'll say, hey, maybe we should get together and discuss this further, because I don't know, but we might have something. I'm not sure. There might be some potential, that kind of thing, right? Or they'll say, we are actually looking for someone right now. If you are interested in coming down and talking about that, we could set that up. Let me know. So there's a variety of things you can do. And the idea is that none of this is following any kind of standard company procedure. This is all just unstructured. It's a hack. You're in the wild. There's no rules. But these are some best practices. What I just described is what I did. But I did it exclusively with CEOs that I didn't know, and they didn't know me. And a lot of them ended up being my consulting clients, when this was all over. I met some people that were just absolute non-starters. They hated me. They thought the whole idea was stupid. I don't understand why they agreed to an informational interview. But those were only a couple of people. The vast majority of people that I met in informational interviews doing this, they were super nice. And there's several people that I sort of met through this that ended up being like long-term sort of business contacts for me and clients. So, so you can do it. I mean, this is one example of it. I could go on, but anyway, if anyone's interested, that's kind of something you can do. So I don't know if that answers your question. How do you start with networking? But I mean, these are things you can do. The more you learn, the more things you can do. Yvette says, since I did a parent advocate for kids with IEP special education, I know special education laws. I'll reach out to law firms for legal aid or advocacy work with nonprofit organization. Yes, that's definitely the case. But listen, I don't know. I'm of the opinion personally that, if you are strong in one area, that does bleed over to giving you abilities in other areas too. Like there's some indirect stuff. So for example, because you did IEP special education, obviously you know a bit about education, and obviously you know a bit about, what was it? Legal aid, like, or special education laws, right? Now, yes, you can work directly in that, right? But for example, let's pretend that, like, look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just using this as an example, okay? But like, okay, if someone who knows you, somebody that you've worked with, maybe a boss or somebody like that, or a coworker, they can see how knowledgeable you are, how diligent you are, how much attention to detail you have, how professional you conduct yourself, how professionally you communicate with people, your sense of professionalism, your communication skills, and your ability to be highly trainable. You can they can give you something that you don't know how to do, but you can train yourself in record time, learn what that involves, and then you're doing it. They've seen you do that several times. They've challenged you with that kind of situation. You have a lot of abilities. It spills over into other areas. They can say, listen, I don't have a need for, someone that is an expert on special education laws, but I do need a paralegal. And I know you, I trust you, I know how professional you are, and I know how competent you are. You already deal with laws in this sort of application. The stuff I need the paralegal to do is really not rocket science. I'd rather hire you for that if you're up for it. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things like this that happen in the world. You don't have to have that super targeted kind of background, My career has been one exactly like that, like I described. I started out in the railroad. I moved into the fashion industry. I moved into IT, then teaching, and now I'm a YouTuber. I mean, and a management consultant. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, people are capable. You can be capable in many areas. And a lot of skills, they allow you to do not just one thing, but they're general skills. You could apply it to many different industries or situations. So the thing is, if you are contacting people that know you, like a boss, and they regard you as very promising, that you can get stuff outside your core competency and succeed at it. This is how people used to get jobs like 2 generations ago. You would get a wide variety of jobs. For a couple of years, you were working in a factory, assembling things on an assembly line. Next thing you know, you were doing something completely different. You were, you were teaching people in a school for, helping people get their GED or something. You know what I mean? And then after that, you moved into like a different industry, doing some semi-skilled thing there. And it's not purely based on what you've done in your career path, right? So in a lot of areas, they're just looking for competent, professional, motivated people, That's what they're looking for. And so don't be fooled by what a lot of recruiters purport to say the company is looking for, where it's very specialized. That's usually not how it works. What's really going on is they're just looking for competent, talented, motivated people. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, you have to have a PhD in whatever that exact thing is. You know what I mean? So my point I'm trying to make here is consider things outside that too. That they might be ancillary to it. They're somewhat related, but it is a possibility if your mind is open to it. And in the world of networking, you can actually get these positions, because people believe in you. They say, yeah, I've worked with this person for 10 years. They're really good. Of course they could do that. If that's what you need, you want to get this person? Sure, they'd be able to do it. The only question is, would they want to do it? That's the only question, So anyway, I don't know if that's neither here nor there, but that's a real thing. That doesn't get acknowledged as much as it should be, I think, because the recruiter's theory of how people are right for different jobs, that usually a lot of that doesn't translate to the real world. And when I was in academia, I looked for peer-reviewed studies that showed that some of those principles are in fact true. And I couldn't find a lot of them. It doesn't mean they don't exist, but I couldn't find them. They were suspiciously absent where I looked. I know it's like a sort of very trendy thing that they're teaching people like this principle as if it's a fact, but the data on showing that to be true across the board is really, really dubious, for a lot of the principles that they're teaching. And this is what we see. It's no coincidence that, the people that recruiters pick, and if you go through that process, do those make the best employees? No, they don't. In fact, it's gone the opposite way. Employee turnover is growing all the time. Like the average stay of an employee is declining year over year, and it has been doing for about 40 years. That suggests the opposite. That suggests that we're not matching people to jobs, if anything. It could be a variety of other factors too, but it's certainly not supporting the fact that we're picking the right people. Anyway, I think I put everyone to sleep. So does anyone have any questions? Let me know your questions. If people give me some questions, I'll answer them. Other than that, I'll have to sign off pretty soon. It's been, we've already passed the hour mark, so we're doing okay. On this 4th of July for our American friends. Onion says, how do you deal with catch-22 questions such as, tell me about a time you broke the rules? I told the interviewer about a time I cheated on a test and I don't think he liked it too much. Okay, Onion, are you ready for some truth here? Are you ready for me to slap you in the face with reality? Okay, here's the deal. So, Onion, this is what we call a trick question, right? The king of all trick questions is the weakness question, where they say, what is your weakness, right? It helps better if I'm pointing right into the camera. What is your weakness? And if you were an ant on the top of my monitor, you'd be scared now because that's what you saw. So the reality is what recruiters are doing is, you see, from their perspective, it's an elimination game, right? When people apply for the job, there's usually, if it's an internet job, you can get hundreds of applicants applying, right? And then every stage they do, it's like the funnel, right? It's like the top of the funnel. You have 800 people that applied. Of those, you shortlist about 40 that, maybe the resume goes and the recruiter themselves looks at the resume. The human sees the resume, right? Okay, that's filtered with an ATS, like applicant tracking system. Then of those 40, maybe 6 get interviews, right? Okay, so they interview with 6. Maybe a screening interview. Maybe they screen 10 people and then they actually physically interview or video interview 6 people, okay? So it's down between 6. Now, of the people they interviewed, they have to eliminate 5, right? Because there's only one position. You got 6 applicants, right? So they're looking for a couple of things. One is are they looking for people that stand out as wow, you look really good? But a lot of times it's very close, right? Every single person they interview is qualified on paper to do the job, or else they wouldn't be interviewing them. you're looking at who they're like as people, right? And a lot of times it's not clear. You don't have one winner and 5 duds. You've got like 6 people that are all pretty good, So how do they make that decision? How do they refine from 6 to 1? Well, one of the things is they need to find the dirt on you. They need to find reasons that are like tiebreakers, right? So what better way for a recruiter to do this than say, so, listen, I know you want this job and everything. Like, we're all men of the world, and we know how this works. But if I was going to eliminate you from the running for a reason, what would that reason be, for you, right? And then the candidate says, oh, okay, well, let me tell you, I hate everybody. That might not have kind of translated so far. That might not have shown, but I absolutely hate everyone. If you're like a conservative type, I hate your guts, And if you're some kind of tree-hugging liberal type, you better steer clear of me, And if you're one of those people in the middle that just can't seem to make up their mind, go and do that on your own time, because I got no time for you, It's like, I hate everyone. That's the thing about me. A lot of people don't like that. So that's probably, that would be the reason, right? And then the recruiter says like, wow, okay, hey, thanks for being so forthcoming. A lot of people, when I ask this question, they waffle and they, change their story, but you just gave it to me straight. That's great. That's a sign of someone who really knows where they stand. And then they eliminate you and, they ghost you, and that's the end of it, right? Because they got their reason to eliminate you. It's very simple. So that's what these questions are, right? So tell me about a time you broke the rules. Are you supposed to break the rules? Is that the sign of a good employee? Of course not, right? It's like if you went to an interview and you led with, oh, by the way, I think you should know, I like to break rules. The parking lot outside, it's got a big no parking sign there. I imagine that's where the boss parks their car, right? Well, I parked there, right? Because that's just how I roll. That's the great thing about me. I take risks and I, really go for it. And if there isn't a clear reason why not to do something, I do it. You know what I mean? So obviously you wouldn't say this kind of thing in an interview, but they got you to say it. Isn't that brilliant? So you've eliminated yourself. That's the whole point. Now, if you ask a lot of recruiters how to answer this question, they'll say, well, you just should be honest, because, first of all, being honest with yourself is the way to go. And secondly, we just want to know that, you've thought about this, that you're not under some delusion that you've never broken rules before. Everybody's broken rules. Come on. I mean, everybody's killed somebody. I mean, like, tell me who you've killed. Come on, we can all admit this, right? And you know what I'm saying? So they've just eliminated you with this very sneaky kind of method, right? So the key is not to fall into this crap, right? So when they say, tell me when you broke the rules, your answer is going to be some variant of, well, I'm not really remembering a time that I've actually broken the rules. Your answer is going to be some form of that. Same with when they say, like, what's the thing you hated about your last boss, right? Tell me about the thing that your boss did that pissed you off the most, right? What's that, right? And your answer to that is going to be like, well, to be honest with you, my boss really didn't piss me off. I mean, we were friends. I got along with them well, as evidenced by the fact that I stayed there for 4 years, as you can see on my resume. I lasted there. I really didn't have much of a problem with my boss. And then if you have to give an actual answer, it's something totally mundane. It's like, well, like a lot of bosses, my boss occasionally would ask me to stay late when I really didn't feel like it. So, I didn't really care for that, I suppose. But it really wasn't a problem, So that's how you answer those questions. You don't fall into their stupid, transparent trap, right? Because they do this and people walk right in, especially young people, especially if you don't go to a lot of job interviews. You probably got, you got taken, whatever you call it. You fell into this, right? So that's how you get out of those questions. You don't take the bait. So the correct answer to tell me about the time you broke the rules, you say like, wow, that's interesting. I I don't really break rules. I mean, I always fear that, coincidentally, if I did break the rules, that would be the one time that they're watching me, or that someone just happens to be around the corner and I get caught. So I don't really break rules. That's not how I operate. So I can't really be very helpful to you on that one. That's how you answer those questions. And even if they put pressure on you, you don't change your tune, you don't buckle, you don't give them the thing that they want, because the moment you do, you're dead. That's the whole point. Sheaf Keen says, being candid and too honest can be very dangerous. Recruiter is not your friend, don't forget. Absolutely, yeah. Like, listen, you're not talking to a friend. You're there being screened, right? This is kind of the basics, like the like job interviewing for dummies 101 remedial edition, chapter 1 introduction. That's what this is. It's like the recruiter is not there as your close personal friend. They're a representative of the organization, and in order to make a decision, they're going to try and peel back the layers and get the dirt on you. They're not just going to accept your cover story that you're the greatest person that ever lived. Their job is to sort of go a bit deeper. Let's verify, and the first order, like the most basic thing they can do to verify, is to ask you questions like this. Have you ever broken the rules? And you say, yes. Have you ever hated your boss? Absolutely. Like, what I mean? This is kind of the first level thing they can do to try and get the dirt on you. It can get more sophisticated, okay? But this is kind of the first line of attack they have. Saku says, break the rules by not answering the question. Break the rules as in hit the brake by not answering the question. No, well, listen, it doesn't work like that, okay? I think you're kind of half joking, actually, but I'm going to pretend that you're dead serious when you said that. It actually doesn't work like that. It's not about yay or nay, yes or no. Did you answer the question, yes or no? It doesn't work like that, okay? Humans speak. You can say other things than yes or no. You can give them an answer that's not what they were fishing for, but you still give them an answer, right? So you answer the question, you just don't fall into the ambush that the question was. That's the thing. There's a difference. If you're going to take the attitude that, you're going to ask somebody in an interview, tell me about the most recent time when you realized you were a terrible person. Tell me how that went, right? And if the person says anything other than the last time was, and then fill in the blank, if you interpret that as not answering the question simply because you didn't get an answer that you wanted, well, then you don't understand what a question is. You know what I mean? That's the reality. And this also, by the way, is a tactic that a lot of sort of lower level recruiters will do, because it's a basic tactic where they do the thing where they almost don't accept your answer and they ask you the question again, right? Tell me if you've ever had that done to you, So they say, tell me about, how bad of a person you are, right? And you say, well, actually, I don't really consider myself to be a bad person. I actually think I'm a pretty good person. I try and always do the right thing, and I try and follow the rules and be nice to everybody, And they say, no. I can see you're being hostile and uncooperative here. I said, when was the last time you realized you were a bad person? Answer the question, okay? And this is where a lot of rookies, a lot of young people will crack. And they'll say, okay. And they think I have to say something different. Even though I gave my honest answers that wasn't good enough in some way, I have to give them more. So now they start waffling, they start going off script, and then they're really pushed into giving the interviewer the answer that they were hoping you would say, so they can eliminate you. So you say, oh, well, okay, I guess that isn't strictly true. I did do something a couple of weeks ago where, I found a $100 bill on the ground and I didn't immediately canvass anyone in the area and say, did anyone drop this? Instead, I kind of put it in my pocket, right? I did this, I put it in my jacket, right? And I suppose I disgusted myself. I'm a terrible person. It'll never happen again. And they say, oh, okay, thank you. That's what we were looking for. And they've eliminated you, right? What you do is you repeat your answer, right? If they ask you the same question again, you give the same answer again, only this time with a smile on your face. You say, well, like I mentioned, okay, let's start at the beginning. They say, tell me how bad of a person you are. And you say, well, I don't consider myself a bad person. And they say, yeah, I understand that. But no, seriously, tell me how bad of a person you are. We need to know. And you say, well, like I just explained, when it comes to that, you see, I don't consider myself a bad person. So, I've never at any point realized I'm a bad person because that's not how I see myself, and that's basically where I stand on that. You repeat your answer, right? You don't give ground and start changing your answer. That's something else that's a standard tactic. They'll ask you the same tough question twice as if your answer was not good enough. Try again. They do that a lot on the salary question, by the way. What's your salary expectation? Oh, I can't really say at this moment. It's too soon. It's like, yeah. No, I understand. I really do. But what's your salary expectation? And then you have to come up with something else. And it's like, well, like I said, it's kind of early in this process. I haven't really thought very deeply about this. I figured I'd see what you guys have to offer and learn a bit about the role first. But, and then there's a technique to that question in particular. But if you just repeat yourself, like, listen, like, sorry, I can't say. I could pull a number out of the air right now, but I'm sure that's not helpful to you guys. So, I would have to learn more about the role and maybe get back to you on that. Right? So don't get taken in by these cheap tactics. This is like the basics of how to put the screws to someone. And the reason why they keep doing these same basic things year after year after year, decade after decade, is because they work. Especially on younger people, on less experienced people. These work. It forces people to reveal all kinds of stuff about them that they would have never dreamed to say in the interview. So stick to your guns on this kind of stuff, because they're probably in all likelihood going to do this to you at some point. It's a common thing. Onion says, so basically answer like a politician and dance around the question. Well, considering if you did answer the question, you'd be eliminated. Yeah. Like the thing is, if I ask you a hostile question, I say, listen, I need to know your bank account number. So what is your bank account number? And then you say something and I say, oh, so you're just going to dance around the question like a politician, huh? Okay, fine. I can see what type of person you are. You're unhelpful, right? It's like, that's stupid. You know what I mean? Like, if you ask a question of that nature that is clearly bad for someone to answer that honestly to you, right? You don't get to say, oh, well, you're acting like a politician. It's like, no, that's not what's going on. You're misreading what's happening, right? You're trying to get at me. You're trying to get me to reveal something that I, as a sentient human being who's not a slave, does not wish to reveal to you because it's disadvantageous to me. It's also inappropriate to ask me that. But that doesn't seem to stop you. So the fact that I'm not just giving you something because you ask it in this situation doesn't speak to me. That speaks to you, And I think most job seekers would come with me on this because in all likelihood, you've been asked inappropriate things before, You've been put on the spot. They do all they can to maximize the social awkwardness of it too. You know, and it's a known tactic. It's something that people have developed and worked on. This is what these people do for their living. They do job interviews. That's a big part of what being a recruiter is, and they've perfected their own technique. You know. Onion says, and here I thought honesty was still worth a squat. At least now I know. Thanks. You're absolutely welcome, Onion. Yeah, exactly. Now, if you think that, if someone is trying to get at you, maybe for, nefarious reasons, and you just should bend over and allow them to take advantage of you, you might be shocked to realize that people usually won't play along. So absolutely. In this situation, honesty is not a thing, right? It's almost like the equivalent of somebody coming up behind you and hitting you over the head with a hammer because they're a serial killer, and you just don't let them do it. Because that's essentially what's going on here. They're trying to eliminate you from this process. So there you go. Sheaf Keen says, speaking about salary, how do you recover from giving a low salary range in the early stage and want to get more at negotiation stage? That's a tough one. You see, in a perfect world, you would have not done this, right? That's why there are ways of handling the salary question. And they're all centered around not giving a number, right? Because the reason why they ask about the salary question before you get to the offer stage is not to try and have a legitimate discussion about what salary would satisfy you. That's not why they're asking it. They're asking it purely to attempt to eliminate you, right? We even see that question asked, on a website before you even are allowed to submit your application. They make you answer these questions, right? And any question they ask you there, like this, is purely to eliminate you. So if you answer unfavorably to any of the questions that they ask you in the application stage on a website or something, usually that means that your application doesn't even get to the recruiter. It's eliminated before you even start, right? It's not even considered from that point onward. That's why they ask those. So same thing in an interview. If they ask you the salary question at any point before the offer, it's not to come to some arrangement with you, it's to eliminate you. So what you want to do there is you want to give them an answer, but you don't want the answer to eliminate you. And you also don't want the answer to pin you to a low number. So that's why if you do give them anything there, you give a wide range, a low number to a high number, where the low number and the high number they're reasonable, but just like they're pushing the limits of what would be reasonable for that role, right? So, and then you say like, okay, well, listen, like, look, all I can say right now is somewhere between this number and this number, somewhere in there would be fine. Somewhere in there, that sounds good. You know what I mean? That's the most you could ever possibly give them. And the reason why you would say that answer, that answer is okay, is because it doesn't eliminate you because you asked for too much money, because your range started low, right? So you never committed to like, I need a high number. You said somewhere in this range and it goes down low, right? That would be fine. So you don't get eliminated, but yet it allows you to ask for a higher number later on in the offer stage if you get that far. You never committed to the low number. You said somewhere in this range, and the range goes pretty high, so you know what I'm saying? You're not going back on anything you said by asking for somewhere along the higher end of the range later on. So that's why it's a strategic answer, right? You don't get eliminated, and you keep the options open for the offer stage if you get that far. Chief Keen, speaking about salary, how does one recover from that? So that's basically what my answer was for that. Giving a low range in the early stage and want to get more at the negotiation stage. Yeah, exactly. Guy Incognito says, I wish I could afford to reject places with such red flags. Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? Beggars can't be choosers, Um, that's the thing. All I can say is that there's many ways to get a job. This method, where you're applying for posted jobs, like we covered earlier in this live stream, this is where you find some of the worst jobs, right? The better jobs, usually they're filled through networking. They're filled not by posting it publicly, because they don't need to post it publicly, because it's a highly desirable job. The fact that that manager just mentioned it around the department or the building or the work area, it's got the workers coming to the manager saying, "Hey, I got a brother or a cousin or a friend, that would be perfect for that. Shall I tell them to contact you?" You don't need to then post the job publicly and get strangers to apply. You've already got all these people that want it, and those people have great personal references. People you know and trust are recommending them, staking their personal reputations with you. So, you know what I mean? So, I'm sensitive to your position, Guy Incognito, and you're absolutely correct, and I hope it works out for you. But just be aware that there are ways to find jobs where you can find the better jobs. And, so maybe in the future, if now is like, you don't have time to like learn anything now, you just got to get on with it. But in the future, you can maybe do this and learn about how that world works. And you can get like some of these much more desirable positions where you can beat a lot of people hands down. Not because you outperform them on a level playing field, but because you're the one that showed up, whereas they didn't, That says a lot. Mohammed says, as a candidate for a job requiring certain certificates, such as ISO 9001, would having the certificate be more valuable to employers than having actual experience and knowledge of the standard? Yeah, sometimes. It depends on why they're ISO certified. Because I've been in charge of quality programs for companies, and sometimes the company believes in the quality standard intrinsically. Like it believes that this is what will make us and keep us a market leader. It'll ensure that, we produce the best quality thing around. It'll hold us to a very high standard and make sure that we don't slip, right? Other companies, they don't think like that. They don't have as noble a reasoning. They view it as a marketing tool. They view it as like, okay, if we could slap this certification onto our products, that'll allow us to sell them for more money. It'll allow certain other desirable clients to want to buy our products because they see the ISO 9001 certification. They think, oh, that's a really good product. So it's more of a marketing tool. They're not really interested in doing the program for its own sake. They just want to be able to say that they do it, right? That's where the value is. So, in both cases, there's different motivations for why they're doing the ISO thing. So if it's more of a marketing tool, then maybe, depending on who you're interviewing with, maybe they don't care that much that you're not like a hardcore ISO 9001 purist, you know what I mean? But other companies, they do. It does matter, that you know your stuff, because it isn't just a thing you slap on casually and say, oh, I do this. It's like, no, this is like a way of life. It's a way of approaching everything, so it takes all kinds. You're going to find both of those out there. James says, hi, what to write in a mandatory question in a job application where they ask for my salary expectations? The format is I can only put a number. Okay, so here's what you do. Usually at this point, there's a lot of things you don't know about the job, a lot of major things you don't know about the job. Now, for a lot of jobs, they pay a salary, but like they'll give you cash, but they'll also give you benefits. There's other things there too. There might even be perks. You can, if you're a manager, you could decide where you hold your annual meeting for your division. And maybe you have a branch office in Honolulu in Hawaii. and you decide every year, hey, let's put the meeting in Hawaii, right? It's your prerogative. You can do it, but it's a perk. So you all but enjoy a free vacation to Hawaii whenever you have this annual meeting, right? So that's a perk. So there's a lot of things about the job you don't know. They might not even have told you about the benefit package. So it's pretty hard to say accurately what salary you want if you don't know what benefits you're getting. You know what I'm saying? You don't know anything about the job. You don't know how many vacation days you're getting. You don't know how many sick days. You don't know if it's mandatory overtime. You don't know if they require you to work statutory holidays, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of things. So you can't say. So here's what you do. Imagine that all those unknowns, all those things that you don't know about the job, imagine they're all best case scenario. Okay? Now put in the number, put in the minimum amount of money you'd ever work for that company. They give you fantastic benefits. Every year there's 2 meetings a year in Hawaii or the Caribbean or your favorite vacation spot in the world. They give you, 25 sick days a year plus 10 personal days, on top of 4 weeks vacation. You don't know. They haven't told you. So assume it's best case scenario. Now, how much money would it take for you to work there? It'd probably be a very low amount of money, wouldn't it? Right? Fill that in, because that's honestly what your opinion is right now. Now, if later on they choose to reveal some of these missing pieces of information and it turns out to be less than what you envisioned it, well, then you can always revise your salary expectations upwards, because they didn't disclose that at the time they prompted you for an answer. You know what I'm saying? As you said, it's mandatory. Okay, you're making it mandatory. I'll give you an honest answer right now when you haven't really told me anything about this job. That's what it's going to take. Oh, I'm also envisioning that I'm going to work side by side with who's the most beautiful person in the world? Whoever that is, fill in that name right there. Okay, that's what I figured I'd be doing. Right? It's a reasonable expectation. You guys are in the fashion industry, right? I just assumed I'd be working with them. I know you guys, your company does it. Oh, I'm not? Oh, okay. Well, then I might need a bit more money. I know that's a bit cheap and stupid, but you get the idea, right? That's how this works. They want to play games, you play right along. That way they can't eliminate you on asking for too much money, but quite honestly, you have a perfectly legitimate excuse for revising your expectations later on, if it comes to that. All kinds of music chick says, how to not get eliminated with the 5-year question. Simple. Say you want to do the job. That's what that question probes for. They say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? This is a job for someone who sweeps the floor, right? Okay. Well, I see myself far away from here, not working for this company, not doing this. That's for damn sure. Doing something else, something glamorous and something wonderful. Not like this, because this sucks. That's what I see myself doing in 5 years. I'll have managed to get my movie star career, happening by then. And then I won't even remember this place or you. That's an example of the wrong answer. The right answer is the opposite of that. The right answer is like, hey, I'm looking for working for an awesome company that, where I really get a sense of satisfaction out of doing my job. And from what I understand, this looks pretty promising. So, if you guys pick me and this happens, I'd probably want to stay for quite a while. Something like that. Then they go, okay, you are more of a fit. If we hire you, we're not super afraid that you're going to just jump ship and quit immediately, because you seem to be the type of person that, wants to do this, and you tend to want to stick around, and you have every intention of being with us for the long term. And let's face it, we don't hire people so they can quit a month later. We hire people so they can stay for as long as we want them to stay. So that's how you pass that question. Does that make sense? All kinds of music chick? Does that mean you listen to a nice kind of medley of Slayer and Weird Al Yankovic? Because that's cool. That might be showing signs of having a personality. Saku says, is anyone checking if recruiters are telling the truth? We don't have to check because we know they're not. Okay, that's always been the case. It pretty much always will be until they replace recruiters in 3 years' time with robots. Okay? Couldn't they just lie and say that you want? Couldn't they just lie and say that you want a high wage? That isn't a lie. I think everybody wants a high wage. That's not a lie. Saku says, it's just silly to me that you're playing these games with them. Listen, Saku, you don't have to do anything. Certainly you don't have to listen to me. Go and do whatever the hell you want. In fact, I encourage you to do it. And let's hope it works out. I don't know it all. So if what I'm saying is not really resonating with you, hey, you don't have to listen to me. Just go ahead and do what you want. In fact, the world is a better place when people try a variety of things. That's what keeps things interesting, and leads to innovation. Slayer is a must. Absolutely. I just got the, I'm a little late on this, but I got the Blu-ray of the Big Four live in Bulgaria, in Sofia. And that Slayer set is pretty damn amazing if you're into that kind of thing. Sometimes you just got to get into that to clear your head, from too much flavor of the month management jargon, That's just how it works. It's kind of compulsory showing after every board meeting for a lot of companies. James says, thank you for the answer. My follow-up question to you would be, as I'm from Canada, you're one of those Canadians. Don't get me started. And a fresh engineer. Oh, you're a Canadian engineer. My God, we're just so dissimilar. I even work for a company offering me minimum wage, get experience. Is that too? You shouldn't have to, in a perfect world, you shouldn't have to work for minimum wage if you got an engineering degree. One would hope. In the same way that you're working right next to someone with a PhD, and then right next to them, they're a medical doctor, all working for minimum wage, all pouring the coffee as fast as they can, working and reporting to a 19-year-old, So hopefully that's not literally true. I'm hoping it isn't, okay? Before I graduated from engineering, when I was in first year engineering, I think something like that, I did a variety of summer jobs that year, and I worked in a circus for several weeks. And I was the guy that went up and tied the trapeze back after the acrobat act. They had to tie it back against some support column or something like that in the tent. And I didn't mind it. They gave me that job because I had done rock climbing and stuff before, so I wasn't afraid of heights. So I did that. And after 3 weeks, they offered to take me on the road. I could have run away with the circus, and then I wouldn't be talking with you now, So I always remember that, I could have done this, or I could have run away with the circus. I don't know. Sometimes I have regrets. But anyway, I'm trying to figure out your question here. My follow-up question, as I'm from Canada and this, I'd even work for a company. Is that too low? Yes, it is. It is. Okay, look, hey, needs must, right? If you really can't find anything, beggars can't be choosers. You got to take what you can get. But you should be able to get something better than minimum wage if you've got an engineering degree. What I did, I don't know if this is any help to you because maybe times have changed or something, but what I did was I did not follow the standard engineering career path. In Canada, if you take the degree, you then have to get a license. So you take the degree, that's great. It's like getting a learner's permit. You then have to pass your driver's license. You have to work for 2-3 years at least under the supervision of a professional engineer. And only then, and when they personally vouch for you and take responsibility for your work, can you get your engineering stamp. You can get your license to practice engineering. Right? Now, I didn't do that. What I did was after university, I didn't go into working as an engineer. Companies were hiring engineers, not because they wanted to use you as an engineer, but because they wanted someone that was trainable, sharp, smart, had a very good work ethic. They were punctual. They were highly trainable. They were technically minded, lots of attention to detail. and you could exploit them. So I ended up working for GE, General Electric, and they were hiring engineers, and I ended up in the railroad supervising tradespeople, and nothing to do with engineering. You know what I mean? And that's how I started my career. I started out as a supervisor in that environment, totally nothing to do with engineering. We were repairing locomotives. You know, I was a supervisor, they were the workers. I wasn't allowed to pick up a wrench, but I was the person that coordinated their work, and I was also the technical go-to person for how some equipment was to be troubleshooted and stuff like that. I didn't know anything about that, but you had a pile of books, and then you picked it up. So my point is that there's a lot of other jobs out there that, as someone with an engineering degree, you could do, and you've shown that you've got all the qualities necessary to do it, and you can learn fast. You know, there are some companies hiring engineers for things other than design. So this is a possibility they never told me about when you're in engineering school, right? In university, they didn't mention any of this, but this is what's actually happening in the real world. So there's multiple paths you could take with having that degree. Okay, so learn about how to get a job in the hidden job market. I mean, listen, if you got the money, it's like $100. Take that course, okay? Or just pick it up, but just learn about this stuff, and then the world is your oyster. You can go whichever way you want. You can access all the people that can help you. And if they have a need for something and you can help with that need, that's the direction you can go. You know, best of luck to you. You know, I kind of envy you in a way. You've got your whole life ahead of you. You know, you're right where I was at age 25 or something. There's so many things you could do. There's so many paths you can go down. And I'm not talking about the circus thing, although that's one of the better ones, but much better things than that. I mean this seriously. You know, so best of luck to you. Never stop learning. Get your information from a variety of sources and try things. Don't just listen to advice. Go and try things. If you want to try and see if someone will hire you, go try and talk to them. You know, if you're a real introvert like me, there's a version of that requires you to not do it in person. You could do it over social networking, over LinkedIn or whatever, but find ways that work for you. Anyway, yeah, best of luck to you. I really hope it works. You do not have to be taking something for minimum wage, at least not for any amount of time. Alwyn says, hi from India. Well, hello from Canada. Thank you for being here. It must be pretty late over there. Nita says, what's the best way to deal with a conflict on a job? Okay, finally, a very, very simple, straightforward question. I can answer you in one word: communication. Whenever they ask you a problem about conflict, tell me about a time you had a conflict with your boss. Tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker, or you didn't get along, or there was an argument, or a misunderstanding, any kind of conflict. The answer is always communication, right? So if they literally asked me, how do you deal with conflict on the job? This is what I would say if I was asked that. It's like, well, okay, depending on who I have the conflict with, right? The first thing I try and do is I try and speak to them directly. I try and speak to them in private. I try and speak to them when I know they're not stressed out or in a hurry, like maybe after lunch on a Friday or something like that. You know, people are just kind of chilling out, you know, looking forward to the weekend. You've just had some food, you know, whatever. And I try and talk to them one-on-one. And I try and say, like, listen, this thing that you said, okay, or you're asking me to do, or whatever it is, if you could help me understand where you're coming from, because I kind of don't really see it that way, but I want to get your side of it before I figure out how to handle it. You know, if you could maybe explain sort of why you're asking me to do that, or where this is coming from, or, you know, whatever the issue is, right? And then they say their thing, hopefully, right? And then you say, okay, that makes perfect sense, and I can certainly see where you're coming from. But here's the thing. You see, this is what I'm seeing. Okay, maybe you're not aware of this, but I actually have this constraint on me. So it's not as easy as me saying like okay to that or just doing it. I've got these other things I've got to satisfy too. So So what do you think might work? If I do this, will that work for you? Or is there some other thing I'm missing? And then just try and resolve it, right? Like, this is how you resolve conflict, right? Now, you have to make the attempt, right? Even if you can't resolve it with the person, they don't want to listen or whatever, you still have to make the attempt. If they can't listen and it's a big deal and you can't resolve it, then the next thing to do is to escalate it one level up, to talk to their boss or to talk to HR, whatever the next step is, and get sort of their input and say, like, listen, I'm having this problem. But it's always communication. That's the thing that resolves conflict. Figuring out what's going on, what all the perspectives are, why people are saying things, and then discussing how they could resolve it. Is there a way to resolve it so everyone's happy? So it's always communication. Always remember that. Conflict, the answer is communication. Okay, so if you ever get asked that, hopefully you know what to say. Guy Incognito says, I graduated 3-year degree in IT in 2020, but the education means nothing to them. Okay, now who is them? I feel like I don't have a choice but to move boxes. And maybe that's true temporarily. Yes, for now, that could well be true, but that's not necessarily like the reality of how this works. Need experience for job, but need job for experience. Yeah. You know how you break that? Networking. That's how you break that. If ever you've wondered, that is the answer. That's what it does, right? So here's what I would do if I were you, Guy Incognito. And I don't know you, so maybe you know all this stuff already. I don't know, okay? That's certainly possible. But I would work on how to talk to people, okay? I would learn the basics of like charisma when you talk to someone you don't know very well, to get them to want to talk to you and want and like you. I would learn about etiquette, how you start a conversation with someone you don't know, what you say, what you don't say, right? Things like that. I would learn that stuff because those are the tools to your life completely changing for the better, okay? You want to have like a high-paying job that you're satisfied, you get along with everybody, you do something that's fulfilling and valuable to other people. This is the beginning of it, right? Discovering what that is, what's out there. This is how you do it. Putting yourself forward for being the one that does it for somebody else. This is how you do it. Okay? Like, it comes down to this. And it's not some weird thing that like you have to fear. It's not like you have to be a salesperson or some slimy, ingratiating, conniving little bastard. That's not what this is about. It's about being polite. It's about understanding, like, when you come up to someone, what makes them want to even talk to you? What makes them want to help you? What makes you useful for them? Like if you're looking for a job or something, you need to understand their perspective, like, why they would talk to you, why they would entertain, how you can be useful to them. So learn about that stuff, okay? I have some stuff, like kind of on that, indirectly. I have this, I have that, these will help, but outside of the stuff that I have, like, Go and learn this stuff out in the world, okay? Look at resources on the internet. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that talks about this, okay? But more importantly, go out and try things. Go and reach out to individuals that you don't know at companies. See if you can get them to want to talk with you, Try to apply some of the principles you've learned. And then when you go and talk to them, when you get to that point, work on making a good impression. Make them happy that they invited you in and spoke to you. Make them feel like it was a really good move and that you can be useful to them and they enjoyed it and they got something out of it, Learn how to do this. This is actually not rocket science. This is an introvert talking. Okay, I've been an introvert my whole life, and you're at a little bit of a disadvantage with this stuff in the beginning. But what helped me was realizing how simple some of this stuff actually is, and there's other things you can do that are kind of indirect. Like, if you have the time and the opportunity, you could join things like Toastmasters for a little bit. they help people work on public speaking. It's very cheap and it's very convenient. And you go and you do public speaking. If you're also looking to make friends or, whatever, it can serve more than one purpose, but, check out stuff like that, but do things. Don't just like sit and kind of imagine doing it. Do little things that you could do that work on these skills, because at the end of the day, this is the stuff that really makes things happen for you. Okay, that's what I would say. And I mean, for what it's worth, I mean, I was kind of a late bloomer on this stuff. Like, I was socially awkward. I had no idea how you talked to people, how you reached out to them, how you even did any of that. And I stumbled around. I failed a lot, and I endured a lot of rejection and a lot of awkwardness, quite frankly. It was very, very unpleasant. But that was partly also because I was too pig-headed to seek help, and realize that like this is a thing that you can learn. It's a skill you can learn like any other. Just like learning how to do a job interview. You can get people that will help you with that, right? This stuff works the same way. And it's related to what you do in job interviews also, as an added bonus. James says, unfortunately, even with a master's degree in electrical engineering, I haven't been able to find a position. Started applying 4 months before graduating. It's been 10 months making me think like that. Okay. So I can believe that if you're not doing networking, because I know a few people that went and took master's degrees because they couldn't find anything. They couldn't get a job. So they did the default thing, which was to stay in school and get the master's degree. I don't have a master's degree, not in electrical engineering. I've got an MBA. But yeah, like if you're only applying for jobs through standard channels, like you're responding to posted jobs, I can well believe it. But there's a lot of things out there for technical people. Now, here's the reality that I didn't know at the time. Maybe you know this. If you do, awesome. If you don't know it, here's the truth. Okay? Engineers, as a group, there's always exceptions, but generally they have poor social skills. And that is what's holding them back. Especially electrical engineers. Like when I was in university, I don't know if things have changed, but mechanical engineers, they had like a lot of jock types doing mechanical. People in leather jackets, people that like looked really good, they were kind of buff and they were handsome and, those kind of people, right? In electrical engineering, it was filled with like little Asian people in sweatpants, like that was kind of, and I don't know how else to put this obliquely, but it stank. These people had never heard of deodorant. And so that was kind of the image, right? Now, out in the real world, when I've been like a manager and stuff, and I've had to hire engineers and things and work with engineering firms to do various things, it's like you get engineers. I'm connecting with other engineers and I'm interfacing with them, and it's the same. A lot of these people, they have very poor social skills. The type of people that would write like a 4-page email to someone when it's completely unnecessary. It's like, take it easy, Because they don't know how to bottom line anything. They don't know how to condense something down and say, this is what matters. If you need more details, just let me know. They're incapable of doing that. So that's always been the weak spot of engineers as a group. Now, there's always exceptions. Like I said, you find people that just have it all within that group. They got the technical chops, plus they're just awesome as people. They're very professional, and they're extrovert. They can go out and they can talk to everybody and their brother and make things happen. It's fantastic, right? But that's what holds a lot of engineers back. Now, if you can tack on awesome social skills in combination with your master's degree in engineering, and not be so, like, I don't know if this is you or not, but the stereotype is not be so academic, not be so insular, realize there's a life outside of academia in the private sector. Things work differently, it's much more real. It's more about what you can do rather than are you allowed to, If there's a motivation to do something, people will just find a way to do it, you know? Right? It's not about asking for permission and, you know, seeing if there's a rule on it. It's about just, if I can do it, I'll just go and do it. You know, I'm not breaking the law, but, you know, there's nothing, I don't have to get approval before I do this. I can just make it happen. So, you know what I mean? If you can tack on the social skills and the sort of the real world skills, that can be a fierce combination, you know? And if you have the real world skills with things like networking skills, that will also allow you to discover great job opportunities where people will pick you over other people. They'll pick you over the engineer that also has a master's, but they have 25 years experience. They'll pick you over them because you know how to talk to people, and people want to work with you. They choose you because they want to work with you. Think of the private sector. Think of engineering companies. There's many engineering companies that can solve your technical problem. You know, if I need someone to design like a crane or something like that, I can get many companies to do that for me. You know what I'm saying? But there's only one or two that I actually enjoyed working with. There was a lot of others. They had the technical chops, but my God, you know, they kept sending me like emails, like every technical detail. Like, I don't know. You guys figure it out. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I can't micromanage every aspect of what you do. Just bottom line it. Now, that seems like a silly, petty thing to say, right? But that's the kind of thing that as a group, engineers just don't get. And that makes the difference between a client wanting to work with them and not wanting to work with them, right? Because they just don't seem to see the perspective of the client, you know? I don't just manage you, you know. I got a lot of other things on my plate, and quite frankly, I don't have time to deal with all the minutia of what you're doing. Just give me the bottom line, let me know what you need, let me know the basic time frame. That's all, you know? You know, like it's real world stuff like that a lot of these people just don't understand. So if you can develop that, that is the tiebreaker. Holy crap, I would work with you. You know? That's all I can say. That's been my experience with engineers. So like that's what I know specifically about engineers. I feel pretty strongly about it having a degree in engineering, you know, even though I haven't really worked in that industry directly. So I don't know if that helps, but it's things like this. Like there's a practical side that you just don't get in academia, you know. So I'm sure you're a technical, you know, tour de force when it comes to knowing the having chops for this stuff. But if you're trying to sell those services or you're trying to practice them, there's a whole other side that maybe you've been possibly insulated from. So go out, try things, learn about these skills, and you could be a fearsome person with a great collection of skills there. Very marketable. I'm going to have to sign off pretty soon, but I'll answer these first. Kinjal says, I noticed economic uncertainty, mass layoff, and AI and automation project along with remote work. Okay. Recruiters can't find jobs as well. Hang in there, learn and pivot, enjoy your family time. Okay. I think you're talking to like everybody or something. Guy says, do you think employers are rejecting AI written applications? I don't say write it for me, but give it points and outline. Sick of writing cover letters. Yeah, some of them are, but they're morons. Listen, it's possible. First of all, there's a couple of things here. Number one, whatever you get an AI to do, like if it's writing you a cover letter, proofread it. You know, that's just what a semi-intelligent person would do. Make sure it's proper and correct and it sounds like it's from a human. Eliminate those retarded like long dashes that ChatGPT does. Like tell it like, you know, replace all long dashes with short dashes or something like that, you know. Like all those like giveaways that this was written by like an AI. First of all, and always proofread, right? And then they won't be able to tell and then it's a moot point. You know what I mean? Make sure that it sounds like it's coming from you. So you might have to tweak a word here and a word there, you know, eliminate a couple of obvious markers and proofread it. Big deal. You know, you do that, it's a moot point. They can't tell if it's coming from AI or not. You know what I mean? Because you're not getting it to create the content. You're directing it and it's just acting like a grunt for you. It's doing the the manual work. You're doing the thinking work. It's doing the manual work. That's how these things are best used, at least for the moment. Maybe that might change in the future when these things get more capable, but for right now, that's kind of generally the best thing to use them for. They're incredible time savers, but in terms of coming up with original ideas that can really do all kinds of amazing things that nobody else can, that's not where they're at right now. So use it accordingly and you're going to be fine. You don't have to give up using AI if that's what you're asking about. No, absolutely not. Keep using it, but just make sure that you're doing it right. James says, in my case, it's the opposite. I've been networking and I believe I have good communication skills, even took courses to refine that. I always lacked technical skills. You took courses on your communication skills? Okay. Well, just so you know, communication skills, these things like this, they're real world skills. They're tested by real world results. So if you're like, as you say, you're doing all this stuff and you're about ready to declare that it's all pointless and I'm a great communicator, but it doesn't open any doors. If that's the conclusion you're coming to, that's incorrect. If you were truly a great communicator and you truly do have something of value to offer, which I think hands down you do, then you would have more results. You know what I'm saying? You wouldn't arrive at the conclusion that, it goes nowhere. As a fresher, I do not know a lot of the things from the industry itself. They ask questions regarding actual problems in the company, but I'm not knowledgeable enough from the university to answer that. Yeah. So you should probably get that knowledge then, right? Wouldn't that be useful? Wouldn't it be useful to understand their perspective, what they're expecting from you, right? Do you think it's rocket science, some of the stuff they're asking about? I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there, so I don't know for a fact, but in all likelihood, they're not talking about technical things. They're talking about more practical things, and the practical things, like if you flunked out of high school, you would understand the practical things. You know what I mean? They're not that complicated, right? So if you have to gain those and you can't, like, first of all, you can't tell me that you can't do something as basic as an informational interview. You got a master's degree in engineering, for God's sake. Do a shit ton of informational interviews, okay, with high-level people, okay, people that like directors of engineering, okay, people that own companies, people that run companies, and people that specifically focus on operations. So COOs, directors of operations, things like this, head of, functional departments even, like, head of the design department, or the maintenance department, or the, repairs department, whatever, like operation style stuff. Do informational interviews. Get them to explain what they do, what's important, what skills they look for, what skills are needed now, what skills are needed in the future, and why. You have like 10 conversations with people like this about that stuff. You'll learn a lot. Okay. I don't have a master's in engineering. Okay. I've talked to a shit ton of CEOs about this kind of thing. Okay. They gave me the interview because of communication skills, because of how I contacted them and what I said. They didn't know me and I didn't know them. Right. So, I mean, if I can do this, you're even more of an authority than I am, certainly in terms of engineering. So it's like, you should be able to do this. Go and do this kind of thing. You'll be amazed at what you pick up. And as an added bonus, by the way, you've got a connection. The director of engineering inside that engineering firm. You could go away and come back to them a month later and say, hey, I've been thinking about what you said. That sounded really cool. What you were telling me about when you were telling me about this, that sounds really cool. If ever you guys have an opening in your department that you could use someone with a master's in engineering, hey, let me know because I'd love to work for you. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't that sophisticated, but like even that alone, okay, is something you can do. I teach people how to do that in my course. I taught 21 and 22-year-olds how to do that in university, and they got selfies with CEOs. They went out and got informational interviews, and they got selfies, and then some of them got jobs from doing this. So it's not that hard. You just need to know what to say. How to approach them. Right? So learn this stuff. You're telling me you got great communication skills because you took a course. I'm not impugning anything, but like, if that's true, you should be able to get some real world results. Okay? So I'm not saying this as a nasty thing. I'm saying this as a challenge to you, my friend, okay? James, you can do this. You can kick ass. You can open up all kinds of opportunities for yourself. I want to encourage you to go down this path, okay? Because you got the technical chops. You do. You don't need to be working minimum wage. You need to be like, taking advantage of basic stuff like this because you have the right to be there. You got the credentials to be there, okay? That more than justifies you doing this. You just need to learn how to approach people, what to say, and how to make a good impression that makes them want to work with you. They got to hire someone. Might as well be you. They've met you. You're awesome. You're professional. You're great to work with. They clicked with you, You asked really smart questions. You seem to really want to learn. You had the right attitude. Why would they not hire you? You would be the first person on the list if they were filling up a position you could do. And I've said this in live streams before, but I've had students where a student came back and told me this. This is what happened. And it really shows you how powerful this is. When the CEO that the student just did an informational interview with, when the CEO hands the director of HR that student's resume and says, look into this person, that's pretty damn powerful, It's like no director of HR is going to come back and say, I don't want to, or that's not what we do, It's like, yes, sir, So this is why you talked. The people that can help you are at least one level above you, okay? And higher. Those are the people that can open doors for you. You need to learn how to approach them, what to say to them. The great thing about this is that if you can do it, there's not a lot of competition here. It's not like everyone's doing this. So that's why they pick you, because you're the one that showed up. If you show up, that shows you're keen. It shows you're passionate, you're interested, just by trying this, So anyway, I want to encourage you. Do this, okay? It'll only help you. And all that insider information about how the business works, they'll answer whatever questions you have. Now, you don't want to talk to somebody up here and ask some questions about what goes on down here, but what I'm saying? You can learn whatever you need to learn if that's a factor, right? And you know what? It's dumb, because how are you supposed to know things in a situation you've never been in the situation? Every reasonable person knows this. This is just the stupidity that happens at the lower levels, when people really don't know how to hire somebody. It's totally arbitrary. Anyway, Helicopters here says, hello everyone, happy 4th. Absolutely. Okay, I got to get rolling. Thanks for being here. There's 33 people here. You guys are awesome. I wish you every bit the best of luck. Learn all you can. Keep trying. You're going to get there. If you're between jobs, just know this. It's temporary, okay? It doesn't feel temporary. It really doesn't sometimes, but it is, okay? You're going to be just fine. It's just a matter of time, okay? And the quicker you get there, the better. Learn all you can. Don't just get advice. Try things. And I'm always here. For what it's worth, I do live streams Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So if you do have any questions, you can always come back. But get your advice from a variety of sources, and that's how you learn. Learn as much as you can, especially you young people out there, you have the opportunity to really kick ass. I assure you, I understand it doesn't feel like it, but you have a ton of opportunity in front of you. It's right there. It's just, you don't have the knowledge. Just, you don't see it, So learn everything you can. Have a great weekend. Have a great 4th of July if you're into that kind of thing. And I will see you guys on Monday. Take care of yourselves.